محمد وآل محمد صلوات. Brothers and sisters, the next part of the program is the recitation of the Holy Quran. By Sardar, please welcome with loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذا السماء انفطرت وإذا الكواكب انتثرت وإذا البحار فجرت وإذا القبور بعثرت علمت نفس ما قدمت وأخرت يا أيها الإنسان ما غرك بربك الكريم الذي خلقك فسواك فعدلك في أي صورة ما شاء ركبك كلا بل تكذبون بالدين وإن عليكم لحافظين كراما كاتبين يعلمون ما تفعلون إن الأبرار لفي نعيم وإن الفجار لفي جحيم وما هم عنها بغائبين وما أدراك ما يوم الدين ثم ما أدراك ما يوم الدين يوم لا تملك نفس لنفس شيئا والأمر يومئذ لله صدق الله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. آل محمد.
Brothers and sisters, the next part of the program is the recitation, is the main talk by Shaykh Haidar Hobbollah, speaking on a different reading of the theory of Taqlid in Imami Jurisprudence. Please welcome him with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Many of you will know Shaykh Haidar Hobbollah. He was born in the southern Lebanese city of Sur to a religious family in 1973. He joined the Hawza seminary in Lebanon in 1988 and completed the study of foundational traditional Islamic sciences. In 1995, he traveled to Iran in Qom to study jurisprudence and the principles of jurisprudence in the Hawza at the advanced levels of bahth al-khārij. He has been involved with research and teaching in Qom for the last 27 years. Alongside his studies in the Hawza, he completed a degree in Quranic Sciences and attained a doctorate in comparative religions and specialty in Christian theology. He has a plethora of academic works to his name, in addition to having translated numerous works between Arabic and Persian languages. Please welcome him again with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين الأكرمين. The topic that I want to speak about tonight, the marja'iyya and taqlid, a comparison between two different perspectives. Let's start with a very brief introduction. You know, the issue of marja'iyya and taqlid has occupied a distinguished place in the life of the Shia community for a very long time. This makes it both necessary and useful to analyze the concept of taqlid and its actual role within Shia life, which is what I intend to do here. Additionally, I will explain an alternative outlook for the relationship between the marja' and the mukallaf for consideration. So I will start with the traditional view, then I will speak about a new view that some of the scholars believe in. Thus, I will divide my discussion into two main sections: the traditional understanding of taqlid and its manifestations in Shia life. The second one, the alternative thought of taqlid and the potential impact it could have on Shia societies. So let's start with the first one, the traditional understanding of taqlid and its manifestations in Shia life. How does the system of taqlid function in the life of a Shia Muslim? What are its mechanisms? And what is its historical background briefly? So let's start with a brief history about taqlid. At the outset, many people imagine that the concept of taqlid, along with its three conditions, namely the requirements that the marja' be male, the most knowledgeable, a'lam, and alive, hayy, is unique to Imami Jurisprudence. Many many people thought this, with no equivalent in other Islamic schools of law. Others believe that the idea of taqlid, along with these conditions, emerged during the Safavid era and did not exist before that. A third group even assumes that these ideas only appeared at the beginning of the 20th century, especially with the publication of the book Al-Urwatul Wuthqa by As-Sayyid Kazim Al-Yazdi rahimahullah. All these perceptions are to varying degrees inaccurate, though each contains a measure of truth. The concept of taqlid and the conditions pertaining to the marja' were topics discussed by Islamic scholars roughly 1,000 years before. Not from the Safawi time, not from the 20th century, 1,000 years before. When we review the historical development of these ideas, we find that scholars addressed them initially in the context of judiciary, al-qada'. They spoke of the requirement of the judge to be the most knowledgeable, at least in his city, and about the binding nature of the judge's rulings. The idea starts from this point, speaking about judges. The reason of raising such issues likely lies on the fact that the Hanafis held prominent judicial positions during the Abbasid Caliphate from the second half of the second Islamic century. So you know, the second half of the second Islamic century, the Hanafis became the Qudat in the Abbasid time. This judicial field naturally highlighted such concerns, especially when inconsistencies were observed in the rulings of different judges. So we have a city, and we have 3, 4, 5 judges, and there are some differences between them, so we need to arrange this problem. We need to think which one is better. In a single city, there might even be multiple judges issuing divergent verdicts. To prevent chaos, scholars sought to regulate the judicial process, setting conditions for judgeship, guided by the general teachings of the Quran and Sunnah. Gradually, the line of thinking expanded to encompass the relationship between the mufti and mustafti. So now, from the qadi to the mufti and mustafti. From the second Islamic century onward, Muslims began to show a greater interest in religious matters than they had in the first centuries. They increasingly sought guidance on every aspect of religious life. Consequently, scholars of jurisprudence were confronted with a new and strong phenomenon, an overwhelming number of religious inquiries. That's happened in the next century, especially. People and students of طلاب العلم, Hawza, people and students of religious sciences began turning to leading scholars with their questions, giving rise to what became known as collections of questions and answers. We have type of books in the early centuries called books of al-jawabat, answers. What does that mean? Jawabatul masail al-musaliyah. Many people and scholars send their questions to the marja' in Baghdad, in Kufa, in Medina, asking for answers. So we have this kind of books, jawabat. Jawabatul masail al-shamiyah from Sham. Jawabatul masail al-musaliyah from the city of Mosul. This is the start of istifta'. This relationship between the questioner and the respondent developed over time into a more organized form, eventually becoming a phenomenon known as istifta'. Scholars began to consider setting ethical and religious guidelines governing the relationship between the mufti and the mustafti. We have many books about that, and vice versa. This gave rise to the discussion around the qualification required of a mufti. Who is the mufti? So now we need to ask, should I ask Zayd or Amr? Who is the mufti, Zayd or Amr? How can I know that he is the mufti? What is the condition? What are the conditions for the mufti? So then I can ask him, not anyone else. So they start manage this topic. Over time, among both Shia and Sunni scholars, debates evolved concerning the conditions of mufti must fulfill, to the ethics of issuing and seeking fatwas. Independent works were even authored on these subjects, particularly among Sunni scholars. We have books about al-mufti wal-mustafti, books. As these discussions became more serious and complex, the science of usūl al-fiqh, legal theory, began to pay special attention to questions surrounding the authority of a fatwa. Now we start with usūl al-fiqh, thinking about the fatwa. why the Mufti has authority on me? From where he gained this authority? So then usūl al-fiqh start thinking about that. The conditions of issuing fatwas, usūl al-fiqh start thinking about that, and so forth. Among the Shia, topics such as ijtihad, taqlid, issuing fatwas, and the conditions of the mufti began to appear in works on usūl al-fiqh, not in books of jurisprudence like today. In the beginning, it starts with usūl al-fiqh, not with fiqh. Thus, the conditions of a mufti were explored in two places now, independently in specialized books and within detected chapter of the usūl al-fiqh studies. This approach was maintained by both Sunni and Shi'i scholars. So, during the Safavid period, a major intellectual conflict erupted within Shi'ism concerning jurisprudence and religious law, namely the usūli akhbari dispute over the concept of taqlid itself. Now we have a big problem in the Safavid era. While the usulis defended the practice of taqlid, many akhbaris rejected it outright, arguing that taqlid was forbidden. According to the akhbaris, each mukallaf should personally read the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and act upon their own understanding. This is the major idea for the akhbari. You need to see the riwayat, and what you understand, you have to follow that. No one between you and the ma'soom, called mufti or marja'. This is the akhbari's idea. They asserted that Muslims should emulate only the Ahlul Bayt, not no one else. They said the idea of taqlid came from Sunnah, because they do taqlid on follow al-Shafi'i and al-Hanafi and Ahmad ibn Hanbal and Malik. We don't follow anyone. We just follow al-A'imma alayhim salam. So we need to go to their ahadith. As a result, akhbari scholars did not author works of istidlali jurisprudence, deductive jurisprudence. They don't have kind of istidlal like today. Sayyid Sistani has many books with adillah, and Sayyid Khu'i has many books speaking about fatawa with adillah, with evidence. They don't have such a thing. They have riwayah and just explain the riwayah. What's the meaning of this riwayah? What does it say? Some words in Arabic language, they will explain it. That's the job of the mufti, or that's the job of the jurisprudence, the jurists, regarding to the akhbari school. So as a result, akhbari schools did not author works of deductive jurisprudence. Rather, they were content to explain narrations and clarify certain details during commentary. Notable figures such as Allam al-Majlisi and Al-Hurr al-Amili followed this approach. The notable exception was Shaykh Yusuf al-Bahrani rahimahullah, who passed away in 1186 after Hijrah, who authored a book called Al-Hada'iq al-Nadira, which is considered virtually the first deductive akhbari work. For this reason, some regarded him as a moderate akhbari, while others argued that by employing the method of ijtihad and istidlal, he had veered closer to the usuli methodology. He is usuli more than akhbari. So it was a very big debate between akhbari and usuli from 10th century till the 13th century after Hijrah. As a result of the usuli akhbari conflict over taqlid, the topic became a major and wide-ranging subject. Numerous books and extensive discussions were written on it. and the study of the detailed conditions required for the marja greatly expanded compared to earlier times. However, starting from the era of Sayyid Kazim al-Yazdi, rahimahullah, at the beginning of the 20th century, these discussions about taqlid and conditions of marja and all these topics, these discussions around ijtihad and taqlid shifted focus from ethics and usūl al-fiqh to be in jurisprudence itself, and especially in al-risala al-amaliyah. Before Kazim al-Yazdi rahimahullah, you will find all fiqhi books started from al-tahara till ad-diyat. But with Sayyid Kazim al-Yazdi, till now, when you open Risala Amaliyya, Minhaj al-Salihin, Tahrir al-Wasila, Tawdih al-Masail, all these books now started with al-ijtihad wa al-taqlid, then to ad-diyat. So now al-ijtihad wa al-taqlid became a chapter of the jurisprudence itself. So in the beginning was a chapter in ethics, then in usūl al-fiqh, legal theory, then with Sayyid Kazim al-Yazdi, the topic became fiqhi 100%. And you can find it in jurisprudence. So from this we can conclude the beginning. Oh, sorry. A, it is not accurate to claim that the concept of taqlid and the conditions of a marja are exclusively Shia Imami innovations. That's not true. Some people, they thought this is just a Shia idea. No, it's an Islamic idea. B, it is inaccurate to say that the discussions of taqlid and the conditions of the marji'iyya emerged during the Safavid era. Rather, what occurred during that period was an enormous expansion in the study of the subject due to the intense debates surrounding it. C, it is also not correct to assert that taqlid or conditions like the requirement of the marji'iyya to be the most knowledgeable only appeared in the 20th century with Sayyid Kazim al-Yazdi. This is not correct. What truly happened was a greater expansion of taqlid-related discussions within the field of jurisprudence itself now became part of jurisprudence, moving these discussions from usūl al-fiqh into the actual body of jurisprudence and al-risalat al-amaliyah. However, the critical question remains, were the concept of taqlid and the conditions of marji'iyya in the past identical to what they are today? This is the question. The answer is certainly no. The discussions surrounding taqlid and ijtihad evolved and expanded, particularly concerning the conditions of marji'iyya. Historically, attention focused primarily on the requirements of ijtihad, being the most knowledgeable, being alive, and occasionally on male gender. The condition of maleness first appears in Shia jurisprudence around the 10th century after Hijrah, not before. So, however, today the conditions of marja have multiplied, sometimes reaching 10 or more requirements. So what does that mean? With the rise of so-called political Islam, additional conditions have been introduced, such as the necessity for the marja to be capable of managing public affairs, to possess courage, political acumen, and similar attributes. Through historical review, we discover that Islamic jurisprudence gradually added more conditions for the marja or mufti in response to new circumstances in society. In much the same way that computer literacy has become an additional requirement for employees today. For instance, the requirement that the marja' be competent in public affairs emerged to make the institution of marja'iyya align with the new currents of Islamic political thought, and perhaps also to undermine the authority of marja' who did not subscribe to political Islam, maybe. Similarly, the condition of a'lamiyya, being the most knowledgeable, may have been, at least in part, motivated by a desire to regulate the practice of taqlid and to limit the random selection of marja' by the people, which would otherwise disperse communal energy. Some researchers have drawn parallels here, noting that the Catholic Church's centralized structure gave it greater strength compared to the decentralization found among Protestants. So, this historical trajectory has led to what we today call the official, traditional, and classical views of taqlid. But what exactly is this view? The current concept of taqlid rests on the existence of a number of jurists within the seminary, within the Hawza, who vary in their levels of knowledge and depth of research. The dominant theory holds the Shia, both individually and collectively, must refer to a jurist who possesses specific characteristics, chief among them being life, a'lam, maleness, 12er Shiism, and similar traits. If we focus sociologically, and please, this is the main idea now. If we focus sociologically on the conditions of life and a'lamiyya, we find that they foster a form of centralization within the Shia community. Although this centralization may not be absolute, since people may disagree on who is the most knowledgeable, it nonetheless creates a significant degree of unity. Consequently, 2 or 3 marja' typically garner around 90% of the followers worldwide. This has major implications for financial centralization, organizational management, and the overall governance of Shia affairs globally. Think about that. It's very important, because the alternative idea will speak about this point. The simple question is, how does the process of people returning to a specific marja' actually occur, thereby forming the institution of the supreme marja'iyya among the Shia? What is the process exactly, if you want to think about it? In theory, and setting aside discussions of the existence of political or financial lobbies, which are outside the scope of this discussion, the journey begins with the religious establishment, where a form of intellectual, culture, and guiding authority exists. This authority directs people toward a particular marja' and is composed of what are known as Ahlul Khubra. This secondary tier of jurists plays a central role in rallying the Shia around a single figure. So we have now a group called Ahlul Khibra, and we have the marja' himself. The greater the harmony among members and groups within this secondary tier, the fewer the number of maraja' who occupy the seat of supreme authority. The reverse is also true. In practice, the average layperson listens to the Ahlul Khibra and follows their judgment on who is the most knowledgeable. This is the process. And all of us, we have this experience. Yeah, we have this experience. The layperson then adheres exclusively to the most knowledgeable marja, with all religious practice tied to that marja's fatwas. Critically, the layperson has no right to question the theory of following the most knowledgeable marja. This is the idea. This is the traditional theory about taqlid. The layperson has no right to question the theory of following the most knowledgeable marja. It is simply presumed. Thus, we discover that the ordinary Shia believer has no real rule in choosing fatwas or selecting the marja. They are stripped of all forms of authority. Real authority lies with the Ahlul Khibra, who channel the community towards the supreme authority, the marja. So this framework often results in the layperson losing the ability to critically assess fatwas and becoming deprived of any independent choice. Furthermore, if someone questions the fatwa of the most knowledgeable marja in favor of another jurist's opinion, they may, in some societies, they may face intense social criticism. In some Shia communities, this is the centralization. In some Shia communities, merely presenting the opinions and fatwas of a different maraji' is something problematic. Just this. Many are uncomfortable with the idea of teaching people the multiple opinions exist in modern times. Instead, they prefer to present a single, unified version of Shia religious practice, fully aligned with the fatwas of one specific marja, often maintaining this loyalty for 30 or 50 years to avoid any social fractures that might threaten Shia cohesion. This is their justification. For this reason, I personally, please notice, I personally describe the practice of taqlid in certain Shia social contexts, not all Shia societies, many, I describe it as a form of allegiance, more than mere adherence to a jurist's rulings. It's more than this, if we want to think about it. It resembles a formal pledge of loyalty. Departing from this allegiance seem almost as abandoning the community itself, breaching the pledge that binds the individual to the marja's office in both minor and major affairs, even beyond the sphere of religious rulings. Thus, we discover that the core issue here is the juristic qualification and supreme a'lamiyya of the marja. These qualities are what grant him, just these two things, what grant him absolute authority. What I mean by absolute authority, beginning with the authority of issues fatwa, passing through qada, judicial authority, and extending to managing the Shia community's financial, endowment, and organizational affairs, as well as its general political matters, among others. This is a very brief description of the traditional view of taqlid and its implications, as permitted by the limited time we have here. So, I will finish with the alternative understanding of Taqlid and its potential impact on Shia communities. This is very important to think about it now. The second understanding, which I personally believe in, maybe it will, if it happen, will happen maybe after 1,000 years. I don't say it will happen now. It's kind of impossible. But this is a theory. The second understanding, which I personally believe in, emerges from different starting points in its approach to the issue of Taqlid. I can briefly present several key elements, 5 key elements. First element, Taqlid is not an absolute allegiance. The first point is that Taqlid is not an act of total allegiance. It is merely the act of an unlearned individual referring to a scholar to obtain religious rulings. Allegiance, by contrast, involves absolute submission and obedience to the marja, even beyond the realm of fatwas. This is very important. I will give an example. If a marja adopts a particular political stance, this does not obligate me to follow it, because his political position is a personal opinion, not a fatwa. Even the jurists themselves has explained the difference between taqlid and obedience to the marja in non-juristic matters. Of course, if someone believes in the doctrine of wilayatul faqih, that is a separate discussion. Here, however, we are speaking about juristic marji'iyya, not guardianship. Second element. So the marji'iyya is, taqlid is not allegiance, not bay'ah. It's just taking the fatwa from him. Not everything he believes in, I should believe. Not in aqaid. Not his views in history. It's outside of taqlid. Taqlid is taking a fatwa. This is very important. This is the first thing. The second thing. Sorry. Taqlid and a'lamiyya are matters based on individual conviction. This is very important. This means that no one can compel the mukallaf, to engage to taqlid of a particular marja unless he is convinced by the very idea of taqlid. If someone is unconvinced by the concept of taqlid and adopts a different perspective, he cannot be deemed a sinner or penalized for it. Moreover, the very idea of taqlid is not subject to taqlid itself. Many scholars, they say this, because it's impossible that the idea of taqlid, you must follow someone in this idea. So why I should follow him in this idea? Moreover, the very idea of taqlid is not subject to taqlid itself. It must be adopted independently. The same applies to the concept of a'lamiyya. If the individual is not convinced of the necessity of following the most knowledgeable jurist, then we cannot consider him sinful if he follows someone else, because he doesn't believe in, he doesn't convinced, he's not convinced on this. The third element. The fundamental conditions of the marja are juristic competence and integrity, not gender, a'lamiyya, or other criteria. According to this view, what is essential for the marja are two qualities: genuine juristic competence and moral integrity, honesty in scholarly research and in transmitting fatwas. Conditions such as a'lamiyya, maleness, and being alive are not fundamental requirements according to this perspective, as there is no strong and convincing evidence for them. This leads to, this is important now, this leads to the possibility of diversity in taqlid among the Shia, thereby ending the phenomenon of centralization in favor of decentralization. Consequently, it becomes permissible for the follower to engage in what is known as tab'id, diversification. Fourth element, distinguishing, and this is very important because maybe someone will say, now you make a Shia 1,000 groups. This is problematic. The fourth element, distinguishing between juristic marji'iyya and organizational leadership. This means that the marja' to whom one refers for religious rulings need not be the same person who manages the community's endowments, finance, social activities, political affairs, and other matters. Thus, the term supreme marja' becomes a purely organizational title that can be assumed by any qualified jurist who presents a particular plan for managing the affairs of the Shia community in the coming years. So now we have the leader, not leader, political leader, the leader as an organization, and the mufti. I take the fatwa from the mufti, but to managing everything in Shia community, financial, everything, this is another institution. This is the idea here. Since this is on an organization rather than purely religious, it can be subjected to an electoral process and set within a defined term. Candidates could compete based on the quality of their programs for advancing the Shia community worldwide over the next 5 or 10 years. Accordingly, A'lamiyya in jurisprudence and legal theory would no longer be the exclusive qualification for authority over the Shia world. Instead, in addition to fiqh, other qualifications such as expertise in administration, organization, finance, political engagement, and so forth would be considered. For example, what is the candidate's vision of how Shia minorities should engage with their governments? What is his program for improving the conditions of Shia minority globally? What plans does he have for enhancing the economic circumstances of Shia communities? And so on. The first and last one, selecting fatwa based on preponderance. Here lies a very critical point. In the traditional reading, as I explained, selecting the marja' was based on the testimony of the Ahlul Khubra. However, in this alternative reading, after confirming a jurist's competence, the selection is based on the degree of confidence the followers has in the soundness and Islamic spirit of the marja''s fatwa, even if the follower is not a jurist himself. For instance, if he finds that Shaykh al-Muntadhari's fatwa, seeing khums as a general tax intended to meet the needs of Muslims, resonates more with the spirit of Islam than Sayyid Khui's fatwa, which treats khums as a personal right of the Holy Prophet and the Banu Hashim, then he should follow al-Muntadhari's fatwa. Similarly, if the follower finds no practical preference among fatwas, especially in minor detailed rulings, he may choose freely between them. In this manner, the personal outlook and religious social culture of the mukallaf come to play a role in his choice of fatwa he deems most suitable and appropriate. He does not invent fatwas himself, since he is not a jurist, but he possesses the authority to choose among fatwas based on his religious culture, convictions, and experience. Thus, the popular trend inclined towards religious reform tends to follow reformist figures, while other gravitates towards more traditional personalities. In this way, those followers who hold open-minded and reformist views are no longer trapped under the authority of a marja whose general religious overview and ideas they do not believe in. This leads to a greater degree of harmony between the mukallaf and the fatwas he follows, between the mukallaf and his marja. The first conclusion. The first perspective, the traditional one, concentrates authority entirely, depriving the followers of any real capacity or right to choose either their marja or the fatwas they follow. In contrast, the second position distributes authority among three parties: individual followers on the one hand, because he can choose the fatwa, the juristic religious authority on the other hand, and finally the administrative and organizational leadership. So we have three parties now. This is a perspective being proposed for discussion. As for the juristic argument that might validate either the first or the second approach, they require a much broader discussion that the current time does not permit. And this is the difference between these two perspectives. In nature of taqlid, it's kind of bay'ah, it's not bay'ah. Followers rule, he has nothing, he has activate, participate. Authority is structure, centralized, decentralized. Marja conditions, a'lamiyya and many things, just faqaha and integrity. Leadership model, in the first view, the leadership, the organization, and the religious authority is one, but in the second one, it's separate. This is just a brief of these two perspectives. Some scholars, the vast majority of the scholars, to be honest, believe in the first one, but some scholars believe in the second one. And I think that scholars like Shaykh Ibrahim al-Jannati, Sayyid Muhammad Hussein Fadlullah, and others, they are more closer to the second one than the first one here. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
Thank you very much, Sheikh. Brothers and sisters, we have a few minutes for questions. I'm sure there are lots of people who have questions. We'll try to keep it to about 10 to 15 minutes just because of time, and then we can possibly have further discussion later.
Thank you very much, Janab Sheikhana. Hayyakum Allah. Of course, it's good that we can discuss these things. And when we discuss matters, it will lead to improvement of the way of looking into things, and it will make it stronger. Now, over the hundreds of years, last hundreds of years, the most knowledgeable or the most, let's say, highest degrees of scholars in the seminaries, in the Hawzas, have come to this knowledge that it's better, or it's some will say wajib, taqlid al-a'lam, or the most knowledgeable. And of course, the main thing is that, for example, if I have a severe case with my relatives or whatever, a sickness, for example, I will not only go to any doctor, I will ask for the best. Who's the best? and all over, of course, the mindset. For example, in Salam Center or Mahfil Ali or wherever, we want to choose someone who can lead better. Okay, we will go for the best possible. Okay, now this is one thing. The other thing is that the mind goes that we need to take the most knowledgeable over the less probable knowledgeable. Otherwise, it will be al-marjuh ala al-arjah, which is against the mindset. The less priority to the on top of more priority, highest priority. And there are other things. I don't want to take much of the time. I need to leave the ground. But I believe it's good that we can discuss. But there are lots of mistakes we can fill in because all these have been discussed very thoroughly and over years. Okay, and that is what the top maraja, the best maraja, and of course it is like 95%, I can assume, probably even more than 95% of the maraja will go for that. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you. I can answer? Yeah. So this is, thank you so much. This topic is regard to the evidences in fiqh about the a'lamiyya itself. Here I don't speak about the evidence of a'lamiyya or the opposite opinion. I mentioned at the end that I'm not here to do the fiqhi discussion. It's more sociological discussion, more explain the impacts of all the different views that we have already in Hawza. The idea of عدم وجوب تقليد الأعلم, already we have many scholars, they believe in عدم وجوب تقليد الأعلم. We have in history many there's no problem. الحق ليس فيه minority or less minority. This is here's the idea. There are we have many big scholars, they don't believe in أعلمية, so they have the right to create their image about this institution called مرجعية according to their views. They have this right, and we should explain their idea, part of their right in society. So I'm not going now to discuss the theory of a'lamiyya because it's a very extensive topic, but I want here just to explain that already we have some scholars, some fuqaha and maraji, they don't believe in a'lamiyya. So what is the impact? What is the image of the taqlid and ijtihad, the relationship between marja' and mukallaf according to this view? This was what I want to do here, just this.
Thank you. Any question on the lady side? Okay, I've got 4 people on the gent side. We're going to try and take short questions if possible, please, and then we'll...
Bismillah ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I will ask my question in Arabic if you don't mind, and you can answer in English. Okay. He will answer in English. Don't worry.
You speak English. I've spoken to you in
Yeah, I know, but this is like...
Speak in English.
This is it. Shall I ask?
In English, please. In English, please, so people can understand.
It will be difficult for me in English.
You can translate it in English. No, he speaks English. He has a YouTube channel. He's a very good.
If you don't have to answer, we can ask someone. There's 4 people who have questions.
أحسن الله إليكم شيخنا على جدكم في اجتهادكم وطاب لي
Ask in English because other people can't understand. Please.
Thank you. Thank you, Shaykh Hobbollah. Thank you very much. Haji, please. I had this discussion with
the marhum Sayyid Muhammad Hussain Fadlallah. Well, the first one, he said the most difficult one is going to be separation of khums from the alam.
Khums from the
Alam.
Alam.
That you should give the khums only to the alam and not to anybody else.
No, we have many scholars of Maraja, they accept giving khums for all mujtahidi, to all any mujtahid.
But he said this is going to be controversial.
Yeah, maybe.
The second one.
Even Sayyid al-Khuyi, when he said that you have to pay to the a'lam, it's ahwat wujuban.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the second one, he said, which is more difficult, as you have hinted there, is that one person is not able to master everything.
Yeah.
Therefore, there is a need for a council of ulama, if you like, then each one specializes in certain aspects, and they, as a shura, can handle. He said it's very difficult to implement, but without that we are losing people who don't think the alam has got the capacity to give that particular ruling. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think that's true. And before Sayyid Muhammad Hussain Fadlallah, we have Shaykh Murtada Mutahari who mentioned this idea. He said it's very difficult now for one person to be a'lam in all topics in fiqh. Because fiqh now is such a very big thousands and thousands of masail we have in fiqh. It's very difficult to be a'lam in every mas'ala in fiqh. So because of this, they said maybe X is a'lam in, for example, in ibadat, and Y a'lam in, for example, in mu'amalat. Yeah, that's right.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh. I wanted to ask, to what extent do you think the individual should have agency over which rulings they resonate with and which ones they don't? For example, if someone, their opinion is, I don't really agree hijab is wajib, for example, would they still be seen as a sinner under your second proposed?
No.
Which extent is?
Yeah, regarding the second, I mentioned that if you notice, I mentioned that regarding the second perspective, you can't give any fatwa from yourself if you are not a mujtahid. The idea here, you have authority to choose from different fatwa which fatwa is, in your opinion, is more close to the spirit of Islam. So you don't have any right to create a fatwa from yourself. No one has this fatwa from the maraja or the fuqaha, but you have this right to choose any fatwa, exists fatwa, even if it is not from the a'lam. This is their perspective here.
So the agency is only in the initial, do I believe in taqlid, yes or no?
Yeah.
And then it stops there.
Believe in taqlid, and if you believe in taqlid, then the process will start. If you don't believe in taqlid, you said, I don't believe in taqlid, not because you're it's because you didn't accept the evidence for taqlid. Even if you're not a marja, even if you're not a mujtahid, because no one can force you to follow a person if you don't believe it. This is the idea. And even Sayyid al-Khu'i in his books, he said that. In his istidlali books, he said that taqlid is not a taqlidi. You can't say that the mas'ala of taqlid is, it's yalzam al-dawr. Yeah, ahsant. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your talk. Can I just ask a bit of clarification on the alternative view? Yeah. In a position where you follow a range of different mujtahids on different topics, is there a risk that you might be following one marja or one mujtahid on one topic, and another mujtahid on another topic, and their usūl al-fiqh is contradictory? So, for example, on one topic, the one person believes some view on usūl al-fiqh, and on the other top, the other mujtahid believes the opposite view, thinks that that view is wrong. So what ends up happening is you're following two rulings which have different methodological basis, and it's an inconsistent position. Is there any problem with that?
No, I have nothing with their principles in usūl al-fiqh. What I have a fatwa. I'm facing a fatwa. What is the evidence for them? That's another thing.
But does it not mean it's contradictory? So
no,
because by believing this one fatwa,
you're
inherently believing the methodology that they've got to that.
No. I don't follow him in the method. I follow him in the result, because the method is nothing to follow, because it's not a hukum shari'i to follow.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for your talk. My question is with regards to the alternative view. So you mentioned that the mukallaf, he has the right to be able to choose the fatwa from a mujtahid that he is most comfortable with. How about the conditions for who is a mujtahid? So for example, if we're looking at traditionally, we would understand that the ones who have faqaha are those that are in the Hawza ilmiya traditionally, or however, right? If somebody is not from that same system, however, a mukallaf feels that this individual has faqaha, does he have the right to say, I feel like this person has faqaha, or does he still have to do taqlid in following the ahl al-khibra and who is a mujtahid?
No, you can't say he is a mujtahid and you don't know the ijtihad.
Mm-hmm.
How does it work? If you don't know the ijtihad, how can say this person is mujtahid and this person is not mujtahid? So you need to have a background, then you can decide and judge. This is a mujtahid, this is not a mujtahid. Yeah.
I've got two questions. One of them is to follow the same point, which is if you remove from the alternative view, if you remove Ahl al-Khibra, the experts, then I haven't got the ability to decide who's a marja and who isn't, who's able to give ijtihad.
No, I don't put Ahl al-Khibra aside 100%. Just in the a'lamiyya I mentioned. Just in the a'lamiyya.
So I missed that point. So in the alternative view, Ahl al-Khibra still exists. It's just to do this, to tell us that these are
mujtahideen,
mubri'in lidhimma.
Yeah, we have 100, 200, 300 mujtahids.
Fine. The next question is, in the traditional view, people like Marja' Sayyid Abdul A'la Sabzawari, for example, he was famous for tab'il. You can take views of. So what would, because he obviously didn't subscribe to the alternative view, he would have been a traditionalist. So what would have been the basis for that? I'm just interested.
No, I've got it. Look, between
أساس تفكيره كان شنو?
Not these. So look, between the first perspective here and the second, you can find many perspectives in between. But this is the right and the that side. So in between, you can find different views. I'm just speaking about two perspectives and understanding about the taqlid and how it works.
Thank you. We're going to take one final question.
Assalamu alaikum, Shaykh.
Alaikum salam alaikum.
I wanted to ask you what your thoughts about this is. Like, a lot of people they don't really seem to follow like Ahl al-Khibra. Like, they follow what their mom and dad has taught them, or the community, like the community has taught them, right?
Yeah.
And, like, or how they view Tashayyu. Like, if a Shi'i loves Azza and Imam Hussein, they follow Sayyid Sadiq Shirazi, for example. Or if a Shi'i is a very political, they follow Sayyid Khamenei, for example. Or if a Shi'i is a reformist, they follow Sayyid Fadlallah, for example. So it seems like there's a lot of other stuff that affects people's taqlid. Like, what's your views about that? Like, can you share any thoughts about that? Like,
I didn't understand.
Like a lot of people.
So you said that Ahlul Khibra has nothing in this case?
Not nothing, but like a lot of the time it seems like other things are affecting people's taqlid.
Not just in taqlid, in anything in our life. We can find our family, social media, friends. Yeah, but theoretically, This is the process. Ahlul Khibra and the Supreme Marja'. So theoretically, and because of this I mentioned, maybe sometimes you have political issues, sometimes you have lobbies here and there. So that's not our case here. I'm just speaking about it theoretically.
Okay, thank you, Sheikh.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to end there. Muhammad wa ala Muhammad salawat. I'm sure Sheikh's around. If you have more questions, we can have further discussion afterwards. Brothers, just to let you know about our upcoming programs next week. Inshallah, we'll be having Ummi Mirali, who'll be speaking to us on the wiladat of the 8th Imam. Following that, on the 16th of May, we'll be having Baroness Wasi, who'll be speaking to us on her newest book, Muslims Don't Matter. And then after that, we've got Nafiz Musaddiq Ahmed and Alia Manji, who'll be speaking on 30th of May. So please do join us for those programs and our regular programs through the week, which include things like yoga classes, exercise classes, Dua Kamal programs, tafsir classes and tuition classes. Please do join us for all of those as well. Muhammad wa ala Muhammad salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أحسن الله إليك.
هذا البحث مكتوب بالعربي؟
أنا موجود عندي، يعني موجود هذه الخلاصة.